The Dallas Mavericks last year were pretty damn good. They were the 6th seed in the Western Conference as Luka Doncic broke out to be a superstar caliber player. Kristaps Porzingis came back after being injured for the entirety of the previous season after being traded there from New York. And with a bunch of role players coming and the system being built around Luka and his superstar talent, the team ended up creating the best offense in league history, statistically speaking. This offense led to a playoff spot in the very deep Western Conference, where they ended up matching up against the Los Angeles Clippers, where they gave them a legitimate fight in the first round that some would argue could have actually been an upset had Kristaps Porzingis not been out in some of those games. But this year, they suck. Like, really suck. And it's getting to the point of the season where you can't really just be like, well, this season's just started, because we're now over a quarter of the way in. They are 9-13, and that number one offense from last year, which was also number one in league history, is now 19th. The Mavericks are currently a bottom 3 team in the Western Conference. They are worse than the OKC Thunder, who, if you asked everybody, they would all unanimously say that they would think that the Mavericks would be better than the Thunder this year. As a result of this drop-off, of course, as you'd expect, there's plenty of people pointing plenty of fingers, plenty of blame to go around. But where does the blame actually lie? Does it go on their franchise player Luka Doncic? Is it health? Is it just a whole bunch of random factors? Let's talk about it. Before we get into this one, if you're watching this video, there's about a 50% chance that you are not subscribed, so subscribe to this channel if you are not already. Also, drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. Also, if you have not already, go subscribe to my second channel where I am doing daily post-NBA game reactions. I did one just yesterday on the games that happened yesterday, because that's how that works. So go subscribe to that channel. I'm really enjoying doing content over there and just giving my raw thoughts on NBA games. Also, there's a new podcast over on our podcast channel that has been struggling view-wise because apparently a lot of people are not getting it in their inbox. So if you haven't seen that episode already, please be sure to go watch that. But with that out of the way, let's talk about the Dallas Mavericks. Let's look into some actual numbers, because I have plenty to say about the eye test with this team, but the numbers give the best picture overall for the entire season. As I said last year, the Mavericks were the number one offense in league history. This time they are 19th, which is a pretty massive cliff to fall off of. As for why, well, the team is shooting 32.7% from 3 when last year they shot 36.7%. As for some of the culprits for this, well, Porzingis is shooting 29% on around 7 attempts. Josh Richardson is shooting an abysmal 27% on 5.5 attempts. And Dorian Finney-Smith is shooting 33% on around that same amount of attempts per game. And of course, a guy who's getting a lot of the blame is Luka Doncic, who is shooting 29%. Also, just a side note, with Josh Richardson shooting 27% from 3, I'm starting to wonder if that trade for Seth Curry for him was like a mistake, because Josh is a significantly worse shooter than Seth. The hope was that he'd be a better defensive player and a better one-on-one scorer, and first of all, the one-on-one scoring has not been amazing, and Josh's defense has not stood out in any regard, so trade might have been a mistake. We'll have to wait on that one. Also, to be fair to everybody here, there has been a good amount of injuries. Kristaps Porzingis has played just 11 games out of the 22 this season. Josh Richardson has missed 8 games. Dorian Finney-Smith has missed 8. Maxi Kleber has missed 10. And Luka has missed a game that the Mavericks, of course, lost. Now, as I said, there's being a whole lot of fingers being pointed and a whole lot of blame going in different directions, and what a lot of people are talking about, which kind of puzzles me, is 2 things: the Mavericks defense and Luka Doncic's 3-point percentage, which doesn't make sense because last year, when the Mavericks were good, Luka Doncic's 3-point percentage and their defense was a problem, but they were still good. So why would that be the reason why they're bad this year? Luka's 3-point efficiency and the defense has been a problem since last year. That is not new. What is new is that they've had health issues and they're just simply not making their 3-pointers right now. Last year, Luka Doncic shot 31% from 3. This year, he is shooting 29% from 3. I'm sure that 2% difference has drastically affected the Mavericks in the win column. That was sarcasm if you could not tell. See, on top of the health and the shooting, I think really the biggest issue that is being exposed more this year is the simplicity of the Mavericks offense. This simplicity could be made up for with talent, because last year Luka leading the ship with a bunch of good spot-up shooters and Kristaps Porzingis being the shooter he was, Seth Curry being the shooter that he was. It kind of worked just because, as simple as it was always generating good looks. But with people being in and out of lineups and the shots not dropping, the simplicity of the Mavericks offense is not working because it's easy to defend when nobody is making their shots. And this is an issue that I've had with the Mavericks offense that I've pointed to previous, because the Mavericks last year were in around the 20s in clutch offense. I don't know what the exact number was. I know they were just at, I think it was like 21 or 22 in like the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. And as a result, the Mavericks ended up blowing a lot of late games because they weren't good at closing games. And I think the reason for this is the same reason as like the Houston Rockets in the past. The offense is too simple, and when it comes time for the defense to really focus in to make sure they get stops, it's easy when you're facing a simple offense. The Rockets, I think, are actually a pretty good comparison for this team, because the Rockets with James Harden over the past couple of years, ever since they got D'Antoni in there, have been a rather simple offense, and in the regular season it has led to some rather impressive statistical numbers. But playoff time comes around, or even there'd be times in the regular season where a defense focuses in and that simple offense ain't working no more. And the Mavericks have kind of adopted that with Luka in place of James Harden. And also, ironically, this is kind of a side tangent about Luka's shooting. What separates Luka and James Harden in terms of why James Harden is better, it is pretty much basically the three-point shooting. That is entirely it. Because Luka takes three-pointers like he's as good of a shooter as James Harden is, but he's not. But James Harden is as good of a shooter as James Harden is, obviously. So I think there is, to some extent, the NBA defense is just kind of figuring out the Mavericks offense. But even if that was the case, having a whole bunch of shooters knocking down shots regardless would somewhat mediate that issue. Also, it is worth mentioning for the offensive rating thing on the face value, it's only technically dropped by 6 points, but the NBA has like 5 teams right now that currently have a higher offensive rating than last year's Mavericks, which is fucking bonkers. But it is a good thing to point out that like it's not like it's as significant as a drop off as 1 to 19 might initially appear, but it's still bad. But overall, I would say the issues with this year's Mavericks team are pretty similar to the issues with last year's Mavericks team. The differences are that last year's Mavericks team was making their threes and their players were healthy for the most part. That has not been the case this year with the Mavericks. So my biggest issues with the Mavericks are still the same biggest issues that I had last year. Once the Mavericks get healthy and those threes just naturally start going in more, I think the Dallas Mavericks are going to be fine. But now I want to talk about some of the issues I have with the Mavericks in general, because that's what matters more to me. Because even if this is a down year for the Mavericks, a lot of people have been talking about Luka and the Mavericks in the long term, because NBA fans have this tendency when a young guy is really good really early, they're like, we're not going to bother waiting. We're not going to be like, oh, it's okay for them to not be great right now. They're like, okay, Luka needs to be competing for championships right now, even though he's 21. There is a lot of push and a lot of people talking about what Luka is going to be and what the Maverick situation is going to be in the next coming years. And I think the biggest solution to some of the issues with the Dallas Mavericks right now would be getting another primary, or I guess secondary to Luka, playmaker and shot creator. I have been in the opinion for a while, and I have said this before, that Luka just simply has too much responsibility on this Mavericks team. And that's not me saying that Luka is ill-equipped to do what he does on the Mavericks, because he absolutely is not. He does pretty much everything he can, and he does it well for the most part. But I don't think it's good for any team to rely on one single player to the extent that the Dallas Mavericks rely on Luka Doncic. I don't think it's good for any player. It was not good for the Chicago Bulls to rely on Michael Jordan to the extent they did before they got him more help in the 90s. So for Luka, I think what's best is that there's another perimeter creator who is both a great playmaker and shot creator who can take some of that pressure off of him. Porzingis, as good as he is not going to be a guy who averages more than like 25, and he's also not going to be a big-time ball handler. He is a guy that can score a good bit one-on-one, but he's not going to be taking the ball out of Luka's hands when it comes time to dribble, and he's also not going to be making plays for other players. It's literally entirely Luka's responsibility to make plays. After that, the next best playmaker on this team is Jalen Brunson and Trey Burke. Jalen Brunson's all right. Trey Burke is not really. So the playmaking on this team outside of Luka needs to be addressed, and the shot creation outside of Luka needs to be addressed, because outside of Porzingis creating out of the post or pulling up for mid-range shots despite the fact that he's 7'3", other than that, there's no creation on this team, and that is a problem. Trey Burke can create a little bit, and Tim Hardaway can create a little bit, but I'm talking like at a higher level, it's just Luka and a little bit of Porzingis, and I think that's the biggest solution to the Mavericks' long-term issues. I think that would help them in their fourth quarter clutch stats that they've had issues with. That's the long-term solution for Dallas. I don't think issues with the Mavericks that are going on right now are to be too worried about. Like, obviously, they still need to make sure they're making the playoffs this year, but I'm not going to lose sleep if they do it as an 8 seed, or if they even do it in the play-in tournament and make it in that way, because this Mavericks team, I think long-term is the more concerning thing to me than where they are at right now, because the issues with this roster that I think are real big issues existed with them last year. It's just a lot of things they were good at last year have been a weakness because of injuries, shots not going in, and defenses semi-figuring them out. But again, them figuring them out is part of a previous issue I had with this team. But that's kind of my thoughts on the Dallas Mavericks situation right now. I'm probably going to do a video like this on the Miami Heat once they get a few more games under their belt with full health, because even with full health, they've been struggling, but I want to give them a few games before I start jumping into any kind of conclusions. But yeah, that's the Dallas Mavericks. Again, go check out that second channel. Again, go check out that podcast. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and that is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.